We we had started creating a RESTful service where we had exposed a course controller that allowed us to create courses and relationships between users. And we had taken some liberties on creating this controller. We were not following best practices, implementing a RESTful controller, right? A RESTful web service. So, for instance, one of the things that we were using is that we were using the get HTTP request for everything, right? To be able to create courses, always to read courses, also to add courses to faculty. So let's rewrite this into a RESTful controller. So I'm going to abandon this, and I'm going to create a brand new one right next to it, and we'll say new Java class, and we'll call it course RESTful controller. All right, excellent. So here we are going to apply the best practices as we should. And so let's see. First, we'll annotate this as a REST controller. And typically the things that we like to be able to do is the 4 or 5 CRUD operations that are allowed, right? So one of them is we like to be able to do a find all, right? Where we retrieve a list of courses. So find all courses. Right? So for now, we'll just return null. The other one typically is where we would like to be able to retrieve a single course, find course by ID, and you provide some course ID as an integer. Right now, just return null. The other operation is that we like to be able to create a new course, right? Where we take as argument a brand new course, and then we insert it into a database, and then we return the course that we just inserted. Then the other operation that we'd like to be able to work on is being able to update an existing course. So update course, where we will take the ID of the course that we are updating, and then also the instance with the new course data. So new course, right? And return. For now, we'll just return the new course. And finally, we'd like to be able to delete public void delete course integer the ID of the course that we want to remove. Okay, and these are the 4 or 5 CRUD operations that we would expect any DAO or any data access layer to provide. Okay, so according to the RESTful manifesto, we would use certain HTTP methods and URL patterns, right, to map this to the correct API. So for create, according to REST, we would use the post mapping, right, and we would post it to the noun, right, a noun that would represent the entity or table that we want to insert into, right? So this would be something like courses. To retrieve all the courses, right? We would map it to the REST control, to the get mapping, right? It would be mapped to the same courses. Okay. If we want to retrieve a particular course and we know the ID of the course, we would map it as part of the API, as part of the path, right? And this would be maybe some placeholder that we can then map to the parameter of the function. For updating, according to REST, right, we would use the put mapping, and we would be updating a course that we know whose ID we know, right? And finally, for delete, it will look very much like the put, but instead we would be using the get mapping, and also the ID of a course that we know of. Yes, all right. Now there's now some of these need data that is available in the body of the request, right? So for instance, this one, the course, for creating a course, we would need to provide the data for that course as part of the body. So to read from the body, right, we can use the request body. Right, request body says, parse the string content of the body and try to make sense out of it, right, and create an instance of the course, right? Now the default parser is to use a JSON parser, right, to try and parse that JSON and map it to this specific schema. That there should be, based on the setters, there should be a set ID. There should be an ID field. There should be a title field. And if there's a user complex object, right, then yeah, it'll try to parse that too, right? And then it will use the setters here. It will use the setters to populate your brand new instance of a course, right, and provide you that instance right here as a course right there. Right? What you do with it, that's up to you, right? We're going to be using JPA to insert something in the database. For the get mapping, there's nothing we need to pass in the body. Right? Also, none of these two get mappings need the body. We do need to parse this ID in the path. That's this path variable. We need to parse it and map it to this course ID parameter of the function. So to do that, we can use the path variable and say, hey, that path variable that it's in the path called ID, parse it, convert it into an integer, and pass it to me as this parameter. Right? What I do with it, that's my business. Right? What we're going to do is we're going to go use JPA to retrieve, right, this particular course. Okay. For put, we kind of need to do both things, right? We need to parse the path for the ID, and map it to this here, right? But we also need to parse the body for the new object, right, that we're passing as a JSON. So this would be a request body. For the delete, right, this integer, right, we would need to do the same thing that we did here for the update, and there it is. Yes. All right. Awesome. Yes. I'm sorry. Ooh, yes. Thank you. Just checking if you're awake. Yep. Delete mapping. Thank you. Yeah, excellent. So let's try one of these, right? Let's try first this. Let's try this one first. The find all courses, right? To retrieve all the courses. All right. So to do that, we're going to need the repository, the course repository that allows us to find all these courses. So let's bring the course repository. I think we wrote that already last time. So we're going to do AutoWire. This will be the course repository. There it is. And to find all courses, we're going to use the repository to find. So notice there's a find all, right? But that find all is returning an iterable, right? And that would be fine, right? We could just cast it. We can just cast it and it would be all done. But let's use this opportunity to rewrite our own finder method, right, in the repository. So if we go to repository, notice that there's we haven't created any of our queries, right? So we could only use just the default API that the repository gives us, right? Which is fairly generic. Iterables. We would need to cast things back and forth, right? We can create our own query. For instance, one that returns an actual list of courses. Find all courses. Okay. Right. And the query that we would be using would be something that looked like this: query, select course from course C, right? With no where. Right? There's no where, meaning I'm retrieving all the queries, all of them, all the courses. Okay. Also notice that I'm not using the native SQL, right? I'm using JPQL instead. It's high level. So this maps to the class course, not the table course. Actually, I think the table anyway is called courses, right? Not course. So now that I have this high level find all courses, I can now write my find all courses in terms of that query. I can say return repository dot find all courses, right? Which now I'm not casting. I don't need to cast. It's not editable. It's just a full, just blown list of courses. All right, let's try this out. Let's see. CD CS 5200. If I could type. Sorry, I'm going blind here. The fall. And there's we're going to build this. So Maven clean install. Okay, so that worked. So let's run this. So while that's running, we can generate this incoming HTTP request / courses. We could just do that from the browser, right? Just there's no need to use tools such as Postman or anything like that. Just a plain old browser will do. Right, so it's running, and we can just hit that endpoint, localhost 8080 / courses. And it retrieves those 3 courses, which I presume that's the courses that I have in my database. All right, so that seems to be working. Right, so let's go further and let's implement a couple more. Let's implement this find courses by ID. So find courses by ID. Again, we don't have an implementation of that in our repository. I mean, we could do this, just return repository dot find by ID. Notice that there's a find by ID. See that? So it has one, but notice the name is generic. It doesn't say find what by ID. It just says find by ID, and it returns an optional, right? Which I then have to unwrap and do a get. It's kind of a pain, right? So instead of using this, what we can do is in the repository just write our own, right? We can say, and also gives us a chance to practice this API here. Public course find course by ID, and we need to pass in a parameter. Well, actually, no. Let's write the query first. So the query might look something like this: query select course from course C, where C dot ID is equal to course ID, where course ID is a parameter that I'm going to pass in as an argument. right? So this will be the parameter course ID is going to map to this integer that I'm going to pass in as an ID. Yes? So this maps to that, right? And this is ID that I'm just passing as an argument. Right, since I have that, I can go back, I can go back and re-implement this and say that this is going to be return the repository that says find by ID, and I pass in the course ID that I passed. No, wait, mine. I'm using mine, not theirs. There we go. Find course by ID. There we go. All right, so let's try both of these. All right, let's let me stop this and recompile. And let's rerun that. All right, so now the courses, if I provide the ID 1, 2, or 3, hopefully it'll return. So if it's 3, that's CS, there it is. So CS 5500, right? Or 2 or whatnot. Yes? All right, let's move on.